Hello and welcome to the third episode of Press A to Play Pokemon. A couple things to mention before we get started here. I did some grinding off screen, and I also managed to catch a Pikachu. Sorry I couldn't do that on air for you guys, but he just came up and I'm like, man, I gotta have Pikachu, come on. 10 points if you can guess why I named him that. Same with Garlic Jr. But yes, our Pokemon are a little higher level because we will hopefully be taking on Brock this episode. Walking by here always reminds me, or makes me think of that area in particular, because it was the first area where you have to grind a lot. You might potentially be a very young child playing this game. I don't have to go in here. And you might get your ass handed to you by Brock, so you have to stay in there and grind some weaker level Pokemon. And I just like this town, really, because right after the Viridian Forest, which introduces you to lots of different mechanics and kind of world-building elements, like status conditions, like Pokemon trainers, bug catchers who are actually catching bug Pokemon. You get into a city where people are spraying the local garden because Pokemon get into it. There's a museum, which we will get to in a second. And there's just lots of really world-building stuff, and it's like there's a gym, which is kind of like the focal point of the town, and there's different houses, not just like Pallet Town or Viridian City, really, which doesn't have anything to do. It's actually like in RPG terms, it's like thriving, really. And really, the one of the cool aspects, which you don't really need to go into, is the museum. Obviously, I spent all my money. Obviously, you will be going in here later for some Pokemon fossils, the Old Ember in particular. But it really introduces early on the fact that there are these Pokemon have existed for a long time in this world. And that it kind of sets up later on the two fossil Pokemon that you'll pick up. And it's just, I feel like it's a nice touch. And also there's a space exhibit, as this man will kindly tell us. Some more world building and some backstory on moonstones, which are used to evolve several Pokemon, including our Nidorin. And also it mentions the first lunar landing, which is kind of tying it into our world. There's lots of elements in this one. Space Shuttle Columbia, this is obviously before, but there's lots of elements in this game in particular, as opposed to the other versions, which tie it into the real world. Lots of references to American milestones and America itself, actually, which we'll get to later. But yeah, lots of world building stuff, which I really enjoy. And here's the gym, and with that we'll introduce one of the staple characters of Pokemon, which is I don't know what to call him, the Hey Champ in the Making guy. He's always there in every Pokemon gym, I believe. There's a few exceptions, mostly for comedy. And he usually tells you what Pokemon the gym you're facing off against is weak to, or maybe some other random tips. Another staple of at least the older Pokemon games. I haven't noticed this in the newer ones, which is kind of unfortunate, but you don't really have proper rivals in that game anyway, in those games anyways. But it mentions the gym leader and of course the winning trainers, Morbid Murph, who will constantly be antagonizing us throughout the game. And it just kind of reinforces that he's one step ahead of you in almost every way. Let's train up. One trick that I'm sure most of you are aware of for Pokemon training is that when you have a weaker Pokemon who you're afraid can't really take the hits of a battle, you put him in the front of your party, and as soon as the battle begins, before your opponent has a chance to attack, you switch him in for a stronger Pokemon. This gives him half the experience points that the other Pokemon, or half the experience that he would normally get, but it's against an opponent he would never be able to take on normally. So it's a good way to train up, like, Magikarps and stuff like that. can't really fight on their own. How are we, this is gonna do, okay, good. We shouldn't have a problem. I was worried that we wouldn't be able to take on Brock, but I think, thanks to Garlic Jr., we should be fine. But yeah, I guess we'll move on to Brock. Brock immediately makes me think of the anime. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It started around the same time as Pokemon was released in the Americas, kind of to build hype for the game and for the game and for the trading cards. They're all kind of designed to whip kids up into a fever and beg their parents to get these games or these products, and it worked. I remember watching the Pokemon anime for years and years. It's still going. I don't know how good it is. Actually, I've recently been having discussions with people that Digimon, and we'll get into the whole Digimon Pokemon controversy later, but the fact that the Pokemon anime, while it was entertaining for young kids, the Digimon anime actually had... I'll go heal up. The Digimon anime actually had better storylines and character development. It's actually a better show. At least the first season. Things kind of dropped off for them pretty quickly. I wonder, is Digimon still a thing? I'm going to assume no, but I'm curious to look that up later. Or if you guys want to leave that in the suggestions, that'd be great as well. But yeah, the Pokemon anime was definitely fun and a huge part of my childhood. There's definitely some scenes in there that I'll always remember. I mean, everyone remembers the Butterfree episode. For some reason, I distinctly remember the episode where Ash and Charizard, or rather Charmeleon, fall into a cave with fossil Pokemon. I don't know why, that always just sticks out in my head. We're going to be facing off Brock, who of course is a major character in many of the seasons of Pokemon. He leaves briefly in the Indigo Islands series, but then he comes back, and he was there for a long time. I think he's been replaced now. Ash, of course, is always still there. But yeah, Brock was definitely a staple. He outlasted Misty. Sorry. One thing I wanted to mention was there's lots of different types in types in Pokemon. Bug, water, fire, whatever. So people actually don't remember that there were so many since the beginning, but they've only ever added 3 different types to Pokemon, and 2 of them were... Oops. Run away! It's a rock with arms! So people kind of forget, who only played the first generation, that there were so many types even from the beginning. They've only added the 3, which were rock and steel, or not rock, dark and steel types in 2nd generation, and they haven't added any since until the 6th generation, where they added fairy type Pokemon. I know some people who haven't played the newest version will say, like, that sounds kind of weird, but actually it was a neat introduction, because what it did was it allowed it allowed them to kind of rebalance the meta. Some Pokemon who were stronger, who were stronger, like Dragon types in particular, who were kind of overpowered. Did we just beat Brock? No. Types like Dragon type who are overpowered, they gave them a big nerf in that Fairy types are completely immune to Dragon type attacks. And before then, Dragon type was just an amazing offensive type and had good resistances as well. And now it's weak to Fairy type. And also it allowed them to restructure a few other things and give Pokemon who were slightly weaker a bit of an advantage against Fairy types. Fire types are resistant to Fairy type attacks, and Poison types deal double damage to Fairy types, along with Steel types, who lost some of their resistances because they were amazing defensive Pokemon. So not quite as good, but still awesome. Onix. I've always loved Onix. Onix is a cool Pokemon. And Steelix, I have to put him on my team. I've used him several times, but he's definitely a Pokemon that I really want to just go back to again and again. And we just defeated Brock. That was way easier than I thought it was going to be. What thing I want to mention while we're still fighting him, but I guess I can mention it now, is with the typings and all, it comes all the resistances and weaknesses and super effective attacks, and it's hard to remember them all. I mean, some are easy. Obviously, water puts out fire. Water conducts electricity, so it's weak to electric attacks. There's some more silly ones, like water is weak to grass types. I mean, I could see why water types would be resistant, not why they're good against water, but, you know, it's just some idiosyncrasies you have to memorize, which you can as a kid very easily. But there's some of the more obscure ones, like everyone knows water, fire, and grass, but rock, ground, ice, psychic, those are tougher to remember. And you kind of, hey, look at that! It's happening! It's happening! Oh man, Beedrill's so cool. Weak as hell, but cool. Anyways, you kind of have to, as a kid, come up with different strategies for remembering some of the different type matchups. And I got a TM. I think it's Bide. Bide is awful. Like, never teach it to a Pokemon. You might be able to get away with it when you're just playing through the game story, but if you competitively, just no. Anyways, getting back to the topic. So you have to kind of come up with some different strategies. And one strategy that I developed for rock type is that if you think about rock, steel, and ice, they're physical objects. They're materials. You could use them to build something. I kind of remember that they're all grouped together because they're all stronger than one another. So ice is the most fragile, which is beaten by rock, because you can break ice with a piece of rock. And you can break a rock with steel, and you can also break a piece of ice with steel. So that, like, ice is weak, and like ice is weak against rock types and steel types, and rock is weak against steel types. And another thing you can remember with those three is that you can bury all three of them. It sounds kind of silly, but it actually works. Ground type is strong against all three of those. So if you think about it as those three materials, you can bury them underground. Kind of helps you remember. At least it helps me remember. And another way you can remember for all three of those is that fighting types can break all three materials. I don't know how you can break steel with your fists, but if you just think about it, that like kung fu movies, you can break it. Moving on out of what city was that? Oh my god, I've forgotten. Rocktown, whatever it is. But yeah, fighting types can defeat all the materials, if you want to think about it that way. And there's lots of other different strategies you can remember. Like, for another one that I really like is psychic types weaknesses, which are basically fears, that common human fears. They're weak to bug. Many people are afraid of bugs. They're afraid to dark type. Many people are afraid of the dark. And I believe they're weak against something else, but I can't remember it. See, some of these strategies don't always work. Oh wait, I'm weak to flying type. Bugs are pecked at by birds. Flying type is strong against bug types. So yeah, again, you just have to come up with different strategies, and it was always fun as a kid to try and come up with how all these different elements interacted. You almost felt like some Greek philosopher trying to figure out, like, oh yeah, humans are the combination of the 4 prime elements and all this other stuff. Nonsense that everyone believed to be true, mainly because I think our brains just kind of want to work in putting everything into categories. Can we beat him? Oh, he's poisoned. Take that. while he throws tornadoes at me. I'm just gonna hit him with a stinger. But yeah, if you guys want to share some of your personal like remembering techniques for different type advantages and matchups, because I'm sure everyone has their own. I feel like the psychic type one that I mentioned is fairly common. Most people know about it. Oh my god, I hate accuracy removing things. Most people know that one. Kind of makes sense. I feel like, I mean, obviously the programmers thought about this. They also had to think of the meta of the Pokemon trying to be balanced, all the types against each other, but they also try to make it make sense. I really feel like the grass against water type matchup is the most like, okay, I guess. But you know. Actually, I remember an amazing comic, which is the three original starters, and it's Bulbasaur, and he's getting hit by fire, like he's close to fire, he's like, oh no, fire! And Charmander is getting hit by water, and he's saying the same thing, oh no, water! And then it's a picture of Squirtle, and his face is all surprised, like, oh no! And then the last panel is him standing in front of a bunch of trees during the fall season, and he's like, not the autumnal season, It was perfect. Kind of illustrates how silly that type matchup is. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say. One last thing about types is the poison type, which Brandomir here is a member of. Poison, for the longest time, was one of the weakest types. I feel like Game Freak, the developers of Pokemon, felt that the ability to poison and not be poisoned yourself was a good enough advantage. I feel like they thought it was going to be a huge part of the meta. Or maybe they didn't even consider it. They just like, oh yeah, they can poison and aren't affected by it. That sounds great. So they made them kind of weaker. They weren't particularly good offensively. I actually can't remember, besides fairy types, what they're good against. Grass types. But many grass types are poison types themselves. Gotta heal up quickly. We can take it. So poison wasn't very strong offensively or defensively, really. I mean, they were weak to psychic as well. Another mnemonic there is I felt like meditation could help rid the body of poison. Not that I believe that, but it is a thing in history that people thought was true. Anyways, yeah, poison was just very weak. And it wasn't until the 6th generation where they kind of tried to balance these things with giving poison a advantage over fairy types. And I that generation really showed the fact that Game Freak was paying attention to competitive Pokemon. Not only with the introduction of the new type and different type balances, and specifically the fact that they nerfed Dragon Pokemon, which was just wonderful. They also added a couple of different advantages to the types, like electric Pokemon can no longer be paralyzed, I believe. Steel type immunity to poison, I think, has always been a thing. But grass type Pokemon can't be hurt by spore moves. So anything that like poison powder or sleep powder or spore itself, any of those moves don't affect grass type Pokemon. Same with like Leech Seed, all those kind of status inducing grass type moves don't affect them. And it kind of mixed things up and gave types more of an advantage when they needed it. Can fire type Pokemon still get burned? I think they can, just because fire type, if it is true, I'm just assuming now, but fire type is fairly strong. It's a good offensive type. But Yeah, they really paid attention to the meta, and not only that, they also made things like super training, which is for older Pokemon competitive players. There was EVs, which are basically like the hidden stats of a Pokemon. Basically, if you fought a Pokemon who was very strong, like had a lot of attack power, then your Pokemon would gain a lot of attack power on beating him. Same with if they had a lot of HP, or if their predominant trait was the defense or speed or whatever, they would get some of those bonuses. So once people realized this, which I don't know how, I'm assuming either through digging through the code or just dedication, they started thinking like, oh, okay, well, Charizard, for example, is fast and has good special attack. So why don't I just max out his speed and his special attack, and that way he can hit very hard, very, very quickly, and take out some Pokemon before they can take him out. And conversely, with a Pokemon like Blastoise, he's very defensive, so give him lots of health points and sorry, I should probably do something. Health points and defensive points. Just max those out, so that he could be a good wall and take a lot of hits. Now there was a max to how many points you could give a Pokemon, and basically those points were enough to max out 2 stats and give like the barest advantage to another one. The only way to do this was to fight the same Pokemon over and over and over again. So people developed strategies to only, like, oh, I need to fight lots of Gravelers to get defensive IVs or EVs. Not the Pokemon, the thing I'm talking about. To get lots of EVs, and if I see another Pokemon, I'm just going to run away. So it was very grindy and time-consuming, and most people hated it. But people who were competitive did that, or they cheated. Like, there was no other option. Woo, level 50. Oh, wait. Are we going to get 2 evolutions on the same show? Brief side thing. Bulbasaur is also considered one of the easier Pokemon to pick because he evolves, both of his evolutions are a level or 2 earlier than the other Pokemon. Both Charmander and Squirtle. Oh, what? Actually, no. I'm just a liar. They all evolve at level 16. Sorry. I think I'll finish my thought here, and I'll do another trainer and then finish my thought. We won't get to Mount Moon today. Sorry, guys. Oh no, I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. It was super training in IVs. So in the newest generation of Pokemon, they decided, because that process is so tedious and everyone seems to be doing it, they thought it was just going to be this hidden thing that kind of made the game cooler, but everyone kind of exploited it. So they kind of embraced it, and they made it much easier in the form of super training, which is kind of like this mini game you can do, which gives you those stats much, much faster. So you still had to do something. You still had to train your Pokemon, but it wasn't quite as tedious. It was a nice touch. And another thing that has been in Pokemon, I think, since the beginning. I might be wrong on that. Definitely since Generation 2. Both what I'm about to talk about, and EVs is IVs. IVs are basically your Pokemon's inherent genetic traits, if you want to think about it like that. You can have 2 Pikachus, both the same level, but one might be slightly faster and one might be more defensive. And it's inherent. Some you can have 2 Pikachus and one is worse in every way than the other one. All of its stats are lower, and just because the other Pokemon has superior genetics, if you want to think of it like that. So people would try and breed the best Pokemon. It actually was like breeding like dogs or something. They wanted the best traits, so they wanted perfect IVs, as it was known. And this was very difficult to ascertain which IVs your Pokemon had. I believe it was impossible until 3rd gen, where they introduced a character who would look at your Pokemon and tell you, who would say kind of cryptic things that would hint at what your Pokemon's IVs are. And they kind of made it easier and easier, but it's still kind of like, I guess my Pokemon is the best. If he was the best, if he had perfect IVs, he would tell you. But besides that, if you were just trying to breed your Pokemon and start to build up to that, it was a little tedious. But that opens up a topic of Pokemon breeding and all this other things, which we don't have time for. Oh god. Wrap. One of the things they really fixed in future Pokemon games is enemy moves are your moves that take multiple turns and don't let you do anything. And he's dead. But yeah, there's lots of aspects to people who maybe dropped off after the 1st or 2nd generation don't know. It's actually quite an in-depth game. It's kind of ridiculous. And it's fun exploring all those different aspects. Unfortunately, like always, people take it too far. And if you want to get competitive about Pokemon, you have to do all those things or you're just going to get creamed. And those take a lot of time, even with many of the improvements, to get a perfect IV Pokemon. I did it for a couple through breeding. Squirtle, Charmander, and a few others. And it just takes forever, even if you get like starter Pokemon who have good IVs and just breed your Pokemon into them. It can take a long time. And then you get into egg moves and all these other things. It's complicated, but also kind of rewarding. Like anything that's difficult. But I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I will definitely talk more about Pokemon breeding and other topics later. But I think for today, we can call it a night. So please, if you liked what you've seen here, please consider liking or subscribing. Leaving a comment below about like your Pokemon experiences, what I mentioned earlier in the show, different type remembering things. And also check out our podcast. We do a podcast. It's on the same channel as you're watching this. Me and 4 of my friends, some of which have been popping up as names here and there. So yeah, check that out. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Have fun. And good luck.